Hello, President Obama and Vice President Biden. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the distinction of a photograph you sent me, saying to Sandra, thank you for the significant role you have played in supporting this administration and the Democratic Party. I have to tell you that I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican, but I think that a lot of cleanup work needs to be done to do away with the extreme power abuse of certain groups of vested interests in our country. And I think it's very sad that we've reached this point. So I've been happy to write a number of articles in support of some of the things that you've been trying to accomplish. I am coming to you today, I think, with a prima facie case of the abuse of power by the banks. And I will succinctly quickly tell you that my maternal grandmother left a small account to a small bank in Delaware, the Delaware Trust Company, where I never had any problem conducting business. And the president of the bank was a family friend. My mother grew up in Wilmington and then moved to Mexico, where I was born. And then Delaware Trust Company was taken over by core states that were still a very obliging and responsible and responsive trustee. However, at the time, in 1996, they said, we're willing to work with you, but we would really very much appreciate if you would consider giving us a more current day fee schedule. Since the fee schedule that we're authorized was established in 1954 by your grandmother and is pretty much obsolete considering inflation and so on. So I said, I will expect you to work hard with me and for me, and yes, I'm willing to review the fee schedule. So we went ahead and petitioned the court to review the fee schedule to a single fee schedule. When I turned 21, I was rendered an accounting. I'm younger by a year and a half than my sister, and I was receiving less money, although my money had been invested a longer time, which I questioned. I was given a court date, and the court and chancery judge at the time was William Marvel, and turned out to be a childhood friend of my mother's. And I had done some studying of the stock market and so on. So I went, I thought, in a fairly knowledgeable position to the court. And basically the account had been established by my grandmother with some stock in Hercules powder that my grandfather had given her. And in the 15 years intervening between my grandmother's death and my turning 21, absolutely nothing had been done but clip coupons, and nothing had been done to diversify the investment or improve upon it or anything of the kind. So I suggested to the judge that it's not wise to keep all one's eggs in one basket. And I had prepared a schedule for diversifying the investments and taking it away from solely being stocks, which is a high risk, low yield proposition, and putting some money in bonds, which is a higher yield, less risky investment. So on the judge's orders to act, the bank acting exclusively on my investment policy, the account was diversified, and it was very lucky that this was done, because at the time the stock in Hercules powder was at an all-time high of between $77 and $78. And they proceeded to lose a lot of money because they invested heavily in synthetic fabrics. So it went over a span of number of years to an all-time low of in the neighborhood of $12. So the account would have pretty much virtually been wiped out had I not intervened. In the 15 years that the bank obeyed the court order and acted exclusively on my investment policy, I incremented the value of that account 900-fold. So I think there is no question whatsoever as to my capacity for an acumen in business. And in fact, my mother, who was a gifted businesswoman, and went to Mexico and bought the racetrack in Mexico City and Tijuana, and almost bought the LA Dodgers. On closing the session with the judge, he said, "Oh, I can see you take after your mother. You have a gift and an understanding of all things monetary, and I feel very safe giving this order for the bank to act exclusively on your input and investment policy." However, the bank, since everything has become this business of takeovers, and I know from personal family history that the antitrust laws that were enacted around the time of Teddy Roosevelt's government were enacted to limit the power of monopolies and vested lobbying interests. Now, what has happened to these laws, where some of the corporations or banks in this country have more power and more assets than entire countries and governments, is a good question. Why are these laws not being enacted, and why is any institution too large to fail? I think this is a serious mistake, and I think we need to do serious work about this. As I said, I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat, but I think a lot needs doing. And I'm willing to be of assistance to you in every measure that I can, in getting, raising people's consciousness level to the fact that the state of affairs needs to be corrected. Now, in 1996, I came to the United States, and I had fallen into some debt in 1984 because I had an abdominal operation in Houston that ran amok, and it literally took 10 years out of my life when I was flat on my back. So for the first time in my life, I started falling into debt. So in 1996, I went to the bank that had now been taken over by core states. And the manager of the tri-state, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Wilmington area was a fellow by the name of John Anderson, whom I would very much like to locate. But since it's a fairly common name, I haven't had much luck in doing so. And as I said, he was a very obliging and kind and a responsible trustee. And so we started to work on a fee schedule updating. The court in Chancery judge at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was Judge Allen, and I wrote him something to this respect. And I got a letter back from him saying, "I can't but raise an eyebrow because it sounds as though you're being coerced into a fee schedule. And I want you to know that you can represent yourself in court pro se should you not have the money to pay for a lawyer. And do not feel that the bank is in any position to coerce you into a fee schedule. They are obliged to obey the fee schedule given and authorized them when the trust was established." I wrote back and told him that fair was fair, and I expected the bank to work with me, and hence I was willing to give them a flat fee that was more up to date to the current fee schedule. So we proceeded. Shortly thereafter, core states began to be taken over by First Union, with whom I had less dealings because I'd gone back to Mexico. You want to stop for a minute, or what? I'm thinking, okay. We worked on negotiating a way for me to get out of the debts I had incurred, which were considerable. And in 1984, Laird Stabler, our trust officer at the time, wrote me to tell me that the bank was no longer going to work